Hi everybody, I'm Brian Schrader, and this is my YouTube channel under Schrader Clinical Consulting. So I do a lot of things. I'm a marriage and family therapist specializing in couples therapy in North Central Pennsylvania. The reason that I wanted to create this YouTube channel is because I want to put some information out there in terms of dealing with relationships and overall health and wellness. I hope you find the information beneficial. Make sure to leave some feedback, any questions that you have, thoughts or whatnot. I also operate a podcast. It's called The Mental Break. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, I believe Spotify, and several other podcast sites. If you ever have any questions, you can always email me at schraderclinicalconsulting@gmail.com. Also, I have a mental break Instagram site. You can also look that up on Instagram, and I'm just starting to get that going, but you'll be able to leave comments and ask questions there as well. And also, if you have the Anchor app, you can always hit me up on there and ask any questions on the site. But today, in terms of the first YouTube video, one of the things that's really important as a therapist that I run into with couples and individuals on a daily basis is the idea of communication, right? So there's multiple types of communication, right? So there's metacommunication, which is talking about communication, right? And the idea that there's verbal and nonverbal communication. This is really important because when I'm dealing with, and it really doesn't matter anybody, I'm always looking at it through a systemic lens or focusing on relationships, family members, family of origin, and people that these folks deal with, the ecosystem, individual ecosystem, right? The idea of everyone that somebody's dealing with. Like, for example, my family, I'm interacting with them on a daily basis, but I'm also interacting with people at the grocery store, people that I work with, family members that are extended family, friends, others in the nearby area and not nearby area. For example, when I'm doing supervision with graduate students via telecommunications, right? So it just kind of takes that all into a larger direction than I want to go to today, but verbal and nonverbal communication and why that's so important. So let's get into it for a second. First of all, verbal communication is anything that's spoken, right? Nonverbal communication is things such as mannerisms, the way that people perceive our mannerisms or the way that we're acting, okay? In terms of dealing with conflict, so when I talk with couples, individuals, or somebody who comes to see me for individual therapy but is in a relationship, whether that's with family of origin, girlfriends, boyfriends, spouses, whatnot, I always talk about a couple things. One of the things is how important communication is, right? Because even if you're not talking, you're still talking. Okay, that's an important phrase. Even if you're not talking, you're still saying something, you're still talking. Secondly, when you're dealing with the idea of conflict management, one of the things that's really important is to, one, have a plan, right? To talk about that plan. But when you're talking about the plan, you have to go into looking at self-care, right? How am I going to manage when I get upset? What are some coping skills? Or in other words, what are some healthy things that I can do to help calm myself down? That's a really easy way to look at coping. And that can come from a variety of different ways. That can come from anything, taking some deep breaths and managing yourself that way, going for a walk, reading a book, exercising, listening to music. There's a whole variety of things. And then there's distractions or things that'll take your mind off it, such as watching a movie, playing video games, nature. Sometimes you can go out and back porch or whatnot, just kind of stare at the trees, at nature, whatnot, bird watch. These are different types of distractions that can also play into self-care. So now that we've identified that, the next course that I want to know is, all right, so talk about that. What am I going to do? So when X happens, I will do Y. So when we have an argument and I'm upset, I'll go to the back porch, I'll sit there, I'll go for a walk around our property because it's really important that you don't leave, right? And the reason is I always tell clients that I'm concerned about when people get too upset that they get behind the wheel of a car or on some motorized vehicle or whatnot because of making poor decisions, making impulsive decisions, or poor decisions in general, not really thinking things through because of how upset they are. Of course, this all depends on the situation. However, with couples, obviously, if you have a situation that there's some sort of conflict that goes on, right? Argument, distress, whatever, and one partner says, okay, well, when we have an argument, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out on the back porch. I'm going to just read a book, or I'm going to go hang out for a couple minutes. And that's fine. And then maybe the other spouse or partner will say, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into our bedroom. I'm going to go into my bedroom, and I'm just going to take some deep breaths for a couple minutes, and I'm just going to process the situation. I'm just going to ground myself. I'm going to work on grounding. That's fine. Take 5-10 minutes, right? But what I encourage couples to do is then come back together and reassess. If you're still in a position where you're so upset that you just can't be reasonable at that situation, you can't be calm, you can't be respectful, take another couple of minutes, right? 3-4 minutes and whatnot. But make sure that you're truly, genuinely practicing self-care in that moment. Maybe you need to do something different, right? One, don't leave the property, right? If obviously, if you live together, don't leave the property, depending on the situation, right? If you're in an apartment complex, stay within the complex area. Go for a walk around the complex. Be creative, but stay nearby. Don't put yourself at risk of any danger. If you live someplace else, still, I would encourage, don't leave immediately unless your life is truly in danger. If you perceive that your life is in danger, then that's a completely different conversation we're having. Okay, but for the typical, disagreements or things of that nature that get you upset, stay on that property, right? Stay nearby. Okay, have that agreement, whatever you and your partner feel comfortable doing. But you might have to change up what you're doing. So instead of maybe going and sitting on the back porch, maybe go sit on the back porch and just take some nice deep breaths. Or maybe you'll call a friend or just process the situation, go for a walk around the property, something to kind of de-escalate a little more. And then come back together and talk about the situation, talk reasonably. At this point in time, you could use things such as I statements, not you statements. So you statements bring blame. I statements is accepting your responsibility in a role, right? I feel disappointed because you're unwilling to have a joint bank account, and I feel like that means you're not committed to the relationship. That's just an example, but finances is a huge trigger for couples in relation, and therefore that could be a major stressor, and it could be an example. Whatever it fits with your example, but fair warning: don't try to use I statements when you and your partner are upset, because it's going to turn into you statements. It's going to be a blame game. So think about it in that nature. Okay, so these are all things, of course, like I said, having to take the situation in terms of what works for you. But it's also important, again and again, I'm going to hit home, you have to communicate any problems going on. You have to communicate, period. So often people say, well, I'm communicating because I'm telling him he's a prick. Well, you're communicating, but it's not in a healthy manner, right? So if we want to use communication to repair relationships, one thing we're not going to do is blame, put down, threaten, any of these things, because it's just not going to help the situation. So I hope that this information was helpful. Again, it's all about planning and communicating by talking about things. Don't get into nonverbal communication where it's just, I'm upset and I'm just going to sit across the room and I'm not going to talk to you and I'm going to let the situation just escalate and I'm still going to remain quiet, and nothing's going to come out of that. There's a time and place for things, but chances are, if you want to have a healthier relationship, you need to communicate verbally and explain to your partner, and vice versa, what's going on, and work together. Okay, it's all about negotiation, it's all about accommodation, and it takes time and practice. There's no perfect relationships out there, but I do hope this information was beneficial to you. Again, leave comments, questions, or whatnot. I'm Brian Schrader, and you can email me at schraderclinicalconsulting@gmail.com, and I hope that you continue to check out my channel. All right, have a good day. Take care, everybody.